Welcome everybody to Mature Living and the second special edition of our high school programming. Today we have Ray Velarde from Bowie, right?
That's correct.
And Judge Eduardo Gamboa from Jefferson. I'm not going to call him Judge Eduardo Gamboa. I will refer to them both as Ray and Eddie.
Good.
I just want to bring people up to date. The reason we started this program is because when I got to El Paso, the first thing anybody would ever ask me was, where did I go to high school? And as I pointed out in last week's program, I just got back from a vacation and I'm standing on a beach in South America. A lady says to me, where are you from? I said, I'm from El Paso. She said, my God, I'm from Isleta. Where'd you go to high school? I thought, this is incredible. You can't escape this any place in the world. And I found that all these years, how unique that was and how close everybody stays when they made friends in high school. And they're still friends today, even if they went to rival high schools, which you guys did do.
That's correct.
And so I'd like to talk a little bit about your high school experience. And I'll just come out and say the two honors both of these guys got. You were Bowie boy, correct?
That's correct.
When you were a senior?
That's correct.
And you were just a couple of years ago the Outstanding X. Is that
5 years already.
5 years already. You were the Outstanding X for
Right.
Jefferson. And probably well-deserved for both of you. So, Ray, let's start with you. You graduated in 68, is that right?
That's correct.
And what was that year like for you?
Well, it was a very tumultuous year, especially towards in the spring semester when we were fixing to graduate. MLK was killed sometime in April, and then during the summer when Judge Gamboa and I were attending the Upward Bound program during the summer session, RFK, Robert Kennedy, was killed, assassinated in LA. That same summer we had the Olympics in Mexico City with John Carlos and Tommy Davis raising the clenched fist. And there was a lot of change coming about. I started the freshman semester that year, and so did Judge Gamboa. And it just evolved.
At UTEP?
At UTEP, that's correct.
And Eddie, what was it was called Upward Bound?
Yes, President Johnson, on his war on poverty, established this program and a lot of other programs that actually worked, something that the federal government put out that actually worked because it got students from all over the nation, in this case El Paso, and you applied, and I'll tell you a short story. There was this coach from Oklahoma. He was a redneck coach. He was my coach, freshman. I had him for a class, and he told me, Eddie, I want you to stay after school, after the class, because I want to talk to you. And that's how I found out about Upward Bound. And he told me, I received this application. I filled it out for you. Take it to your mom. Tell her to sign it. It's for your education, and bring it back. And I have to thank him for basically turning my life around. And at those times, and I think Ray would agree, if you told your mom, a teacher wants you to do this because it's going to help me, she would sign it.
Right.
Or she would go over there and say, if he misbehaves, you have my permission to slap him around.
To smack him, right.
So that's how the Upward Bound started, and we started in the summer of '64, and there was from all over all the El Paso County, and I met a lot of great people, and Ray was amongst them.
And you know, you're bringing up a good point, and maybe Ray, you can address this. Back in high school, when you guys were in high school, teachers were, I think, respected a lot more than they are today by the parents. Is that correct?
Well, you know, it goes without saying, and I think Judge Gamboa will agree with me, our parents were very deferential to schools and school authorities. And like Judge Gamboa noted, the parents would basically give the instructors, you have my right to discipline this guy. And so for starters, we had the pressure at home, not so much pressure, it was just a value system. And so yes, we honored our schools, our teachers. Though significantly enough, at Bowie we had like a Spanish detention policy where if you were caught speaking Spanish on campus, they would sanction you by holding you back in school. That policy was challenged, however, in 1969 when the principal, Frank Pollitt, was summoned by the U.S. Civil Rights Commission to appear in San Antonio and provide testimony, and he was tongue-lashed over that policy. So that policy went by the wayside. But getting back to your question, yeah, we honored our teachers. We had a lot of respect for them, and I think in spite of the shortcomings that many of us had, many of our teachers had a genuine concern for many of us wanting to make us better students. And thank God I'm a byproduct of that.
Right. Well, and I spoke to the guests last week, and they mentioned a little bit about this Spanish deal, not being allowed to speak Spanish, which I think is incredibly short-sighted.
Correct.
Because
It is.
the more languages you speak, the more people you can communicate with, the more the world opens up to you. I still get irritated with people who say, I live in El Paso and I'm not going to speak Spanish because everybody should speak English if they live here. Well, yes, you should learn English also. But if the way you communicate initially is in Spanish, there's nothing wrong with that. Were they stricter, do you think, back then in high school, your teachers and your attitudes, their attitudes towards education?
I believe so.
Yeah?
The teachers, for the most part, the teachers that I had at Jeff and at Zavala, where I went to elementary, I think for the most part were there, and they did help us a lot. I still think of a lot of my teachers that I had, and I really appreciated looking back at what they tried to do with my life,
Right.
my education. And you know, the teachers back then were, I think, more strict, but at the same time, the students were also more disciplined. And
Right.
that goes to our home life, I think.
Yeah. What, you were going to say
Bob,
something?
I was going to say, in the case of people that grew up with me in Southside, we also had a lot of things going for us in spite of the fact that we were very economically
Right.
oppressed. We had the El Paso Boys Club
Right.
that provided a big incentive for us to succeed in school. We had the likes of Father Harold Rahm, who basically went all over the community, inspiring us all to want to succeed and become part of the solution. And so overall, like I was reminding Judge Gamboa earlier, we were so poor, and yet we didn't even know it.
Right.
But there was that sense of pride that inspired us to move forward. And I would say that the grand majority of my classmates subscribed to that. We were just very proud people.
Same with you?
Yeah, even though you had an element like in all societies that you got into trouble
Right.
and the gangs, and my brother was instrumental in telling me, if I see you with that group of people, you know, I'm gonna beat you up before somebody else does. So my brother was 4 years older than I, but you had that element. But thankfully, I took the course with my friends, and you were talking about our friendships that go way back. You know, there's a core of about 12 plus a lot of other high school mates that we still get together on a regular basis. And there's 12 of us that have known each other for close to 60 years. And we still get together. Like last week, I got together with 6 of them. We go, you know, have a beer, talk, bring each other down to a level,
Right.
not to get a big head. And then we go home, but we still have that communication. But
I think that's incredibly unique, that you maintain the friendship, these types of friendships with people that you went to high school with. And I think that theme, again, ran all through my interview from last week. Is it the same with you?
That's correct. When I hear comments about people getting together and so forth, I readily think about like for example, the Bowie Alumni Association. That group has been around for many, many years. And throughout the years, they have flourished and they have done a lot to promote the well-being of a lot of the young kids that are graduating from school. They were very active in my year when I graduated. They sponsored a lot of us to go to college. And to this day, they still do that. We have these huge get-togethers, and a lot of the monies that are generated from these ventures are invested in scholarship programs at Bowie. I have with me, for example, this year's homecoming brochure, and they very proudly announced that this was the 90th year of the school's existence. Bowie opened up in 1927, and I've looked enough into the history of that school to tell you that I have seen many accounts which indicate that this school was a school for Mexicans. In 1980,
Meaning that it was opened?
the school was originally started for Mexicans.
Huh.
And it was right in the heart of South El Paso. So consequently, the student population traditionally has been Mexican-American, Hispanic. In 1982, when they were knocking down the original high school building, I represented the group that wanted to preserve this building. Needless to say, we didn't succeed because we didn't have the support of the El Paso Independent School District. Consequently, it was torn down.
Right.
But that was the original school for Mexicans in this town as it was carried back in the day. Now, the original Bowie High School has adopted a different name, Ambrosio Guillen. Coincidentally, I graduated with a lot of Ambrosio Guillen's family. Ambrosio Guillen is a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient.
Right.
He was a young Marine that lost his life in Korea. And the school obviously still exists. The new Bowie campus was located on a section of property that was part of the Chamizal
Right.
Treaty Exchange.
Uh-huh.
So that's where they moved the new high school.
But I'm confused. Are you
Yes.
saying that Bowie is now not called Bowie anymore?
The original Bowie is now Guillen
Oh.
Intermediate, after Ambrosio Guillen.
Oh, I
It was
see. Okay,
renamed
I
after
got it,
him.
I got it.
And so the Bowie name followed the new structure,
Right.
which is now in the area of the Chamizal
Right.
Park.
Okay. And what about Jefferson?
It was established in 1949, and just the area where it's located, obviously there's a lot of Hispanics. We also had a large segment of our student body were black.
Right.
I remember one year that somebody was kicked out of one of the, I don't know, Burgess or one of those schools, and he was Anglo, and he ended up at Jeff, and that was the talk around the school. Hey, we have an Anglo coming to our school. It was like, where is he? Where is he?
You know, when Jefferson opened up in 1949, that was the year that the Bowie baseball team won state. There was a collection of baseball talent that surpassed any other talent. And when they separated the student populations between Jefferson and Bowie, there went the talent. The talent was basically split. Had they kept the schools together, I would venture to say that these schools would be a reckoning even now. Of course, because they had to go to different schools, now they were competitors as opposed to playing
So
together.
is that what happened? They built Jefferson to take some of the load off of Bowie?
That's El Paso was growing east, and it's very unique because the city limits where Fox Plaza is, Buena Vista.
Wow.
People that lived on Buena Vista, even though Jefferson is about 5 blocks away,
Right.
like Attorney Kirby Reed,
Uh-huh.
he grew up in the Buena Vista area. He had to go to Isleta. They bussed him from there because he was outside the city. He was in the county.
Oh, wow.
So then gradually, when I went to school, I think we were getting individuals from Delta and Alameda, and then the rest were going to Isleta.
Huh. And so you guys were rivals. What was that like? The schools. What was the rivalry like?
It was a very friendly rivalry.
And it was really based around football and basketball
And
that's
baseball.
Baseball.
I can remember that in baseball, Jefferson was always a powerhouse. And then subsequent to that in basketball, under Neto Landeros, they were a real powerhouse. He had some ball players that could very easily could have played in the NBA.
They did.
And
They played for Tarkanian,
Did they?
about 2 of them.
that at UNLV.
Right.
And that was Jefferson High School. At Bowie, it's always been a football school, baseball, track. But the talent between both schools is still there.
What about the education you guys feel like you got in high school?
Well, my first experience was when I went back east. I realized that I had some shortcomings, but I can't fault that to the school entirely. It's just the way we grew up. We grew up very poor, very segregated
Right.
to a large extent, but the quality of the school, the quality of education was as good as it could get at the time.
Now, when you say you went back east, you're talking about for college?
That's correct.
Okay.
I
And-
went to Columbia University in 1969.
Right.
Harvard undergraduate in 1970.
And
And
how
then-
was that for you leaving the environment of El Paso and
It
going
was-
back to New York City and then to Boston?
It was an eye opener.
I bet.
An eye opener. The couple of nights after we got there, we went down to the Apollo on 125th Avenue, and I was aghast when I saw the crowd of people that were there listening to the Temptations. We couldn't get in
Right.
because the line was so huge, but we could hear the music blaring from outside the building, and we were like half a block away.
Right.
But that was,
That must have been an incredible experience.
and coincidentally, I went to school up there with Juan Sandoval, who was an outstanding baseball player.
And attorney.
Right.
No, Juan Sandoval.
Oh, Juan.
He was the,
Oh,
the-
yeah,
at
he's
one
still-
time the city tax assessor.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's a very proud Jefferson graduate.
But you had some experience with a big city, I know, because you lived in Chicago for a while.
I lived in Chicago when my father passed away when I was 6. We were sort of thrown more into the poverty, and I was already very close to my aunt, and they had moved to Chicago, which was where my dad was going with my uncles when he passed away. So I stayed over there for a year. I still remember the grade school. It was LaSalle. We lived on LaSalle, close to the lakes.
Right.
And I got adjusted. I was playing basketball. Obviously, you gravitate to the individuals that speak your language. So I was hanging around with a lot of Puerto Ricans. My aunt and uncle were like, one day I didn't come back. I was playing stickball, which I had never done before. Played stickball, and I got there late, and they sent me back to
El Paso.
after a year. And but then I came here. I think our experiences in Upward Bound, I think it was invaluable, note-taking, sitting in lectures. So I think I was prepared. The only thing I wasn't prepared for in law school is standing up and speaking in
Right.
public.
Yeah.
It was nerve-wracking. And yeah, but you
Well,
get
you
used
do
to
it
those
pretty
things.
well now.
Yeah, you get used to those things.
I think that, and I just think this must have been a wonderful place to grow up. To me, it always seemed, and this may be naive on my part, because I come from another part of the country, and I went to high school back in the New York, New Jersey area. But when I got here and met people, and they would tell me about their high school experiences and their really connection to their high school, I thought this must have been great. You know, did you all ever go over to Juarez?
A lot.
A lot. A lot.
Yeah,
A lot.
and never get in any trouble.
No, we could cross
Very
the
little.
bridge there at the Santa Fe bridge crossing.
And was that something pretty common for high school kids to do?
Yeah,
Yes.
especially on a Friday
Yeah.
after the football game.
And the people from, I don't know if you saw that the previous taping or if you've seen the recording, but they indicated they were from El Paso High and Austin High, and they indicated that each high school tended to have its own place to go, its own club to go in Juarez. Was that right?
Sort of.
You know, I think it came down to whether or not you had a car. Because if you had a car, you could venture into further down into Juarez.
Right.
You could go to the Bronco or the place that would right at
K4.
K4.
That's where we used to hang out at, the
Okay.
K4. And
That was kilometer
Bronco.
4,
Okay.
kilometer 4. So if you had a car, you could go
You
there.
could go that far.
Otherwise, if you didn't have a car, then you could walk across the bridge. At the foot of the bridge on the Mexican side was Fred's Derby.
That's what
Kentucky.
they were talking about. Fred's, and the people from Austin were saying they went to Fred's, I think, and the people from El Paso said they went to Max Feem's.
Yeah, that was across the street from the new bull ring
Right.
by the K4.
So, and that's something very unique to this town and to a high school experience, is that you get to go to a foreign country basically whenever you want to.
Yes.
Your
Well,
parents may not want you to. but-
you could do it back then, but now
now?
realistically it would be
No.
very dangerous.
yeah. I even remember my girls would go over there. They weren't supposed to, but they did. you
And
know.
plus, beer was cheap, and you could drink. If you were a 16-year-old, you could drink. Whereas
Right.
over here, you couldn't drink. The age limit was 21.
There were many reasons for high school students for wanting to go over there. I understand that. Were there any, again, getting back to this rivalry that the two schools had, was there any violence connected to it?
There were some fights,
Yeah.
but you know, I think if you stuck to the friends you hung around with, I mean, but there was rivalries, but on the football thing. But what happened during the game, sometimes there were fights, which I think happens everywhere.
Now, bear in mind one thing: the use of guns was non-existent. Hardly ever mention of guns.
Wow.
Again, and also because of the mobility, people didn't have cars to go from one side of town to the other.
Right.
So if there was any kind of skirmishes, it was usually fist fights. On occasion, you would have the use of knives, but that was far and few apart. Far and few
What
apart.
about gangs?
There were gangs.
Yeah.
There were gangs, but
There were gangs all over the place. But there was hardly any fights in school. They usually happened outside of school.
And there weren't any fights in school, basically because the teachers kept the lid on everything.
Like, yeah, they didn't want to get in trouble. I don't know. But usually there was a place out close to Jeff. There was a store named Gamboa's. It was
Right.
a market, not part of mine.
Right.
But it was an alley, and hey, I'll meet you at the Gamboa's after school. So it was a fight.
And what about dress code? Did you have a dress code for high school?
shirt tails had to be tucked
And the hair,
in the hair.
With what the hair?
No,
not too long.
Okay.
that was during Beatlemania.
Right.
And anybody that entertained thoughts of carrying their hair long, they were met with rejection. You had to
Who
come
was
in.
your principal?
Frank C. Pollitt.
And yours?
Mr. Moy.
Moy. And there's a school named
Yes.
Moy, isn't there? And that
Yeah.
named for him?
He was a coach at Jeff, left, and became the principal, and then
A
he was part
trustee?
of the board.
Board.
Yeah.
Board of Trustees.
Excellent.
And, you know,
Anyway.
actually, I think I once had a secretary who was his daughter.
Well, there's a group of individuals that graduated in the 50s and early 60s, and some of them later, they're called the Moy's Boys.
Oh, is
And
that right?
They have fundraisers, and they put out scholarships every year, along with the Jefferson Association, which is, you're talking about the associations. They have huge dances in California,
Really?
where you know, a lot of people that have moved over there from Bowie, and they get together and they have association dances in California.
Bob,
That's
I
great.
remember hearing from somebody who was doing a military detail in Japan.
Right.
And I heard it from that person. And that person told me that on one occasion he was there in Tokyo and he was going by a bar and they were playing the Bowie fight song. That's incredible.
That is incredible.
That's incredible. And earlier when you talked about being in South America and meeting somebody from Jeff, I went to a conference in Milwaukee. We were attending an outdoor conference event, and I happened to be standing behind this young man who turned around and looked at me and said, "Mister, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from El Paso. Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from El Paso too." And I said, "Which barrio? Which barrio?" And he said, "El Segundo, South Side." Okay. Which corner? I mean, you really bring it down. He said, 7th and Ochoa. I said, "I grew up at 7th and Ochoa. My family lived there for 40 years. What's your last name?" And he gave me his last name. I said, "I don't remember you, mijo." And then he asked me for my brothers. I gave him their names, and he said, "I grew up with them." And I came back telling people, can you imagine what a coincidence?
It's gotten to be an incredibly small world. I mean,
Right.
But even now, I'll ask people, I don't ask them, where did you go to undergraduate or where you went to law school? I'll ask them, where did you go to high school?
Yeah,
Right.
It's insane how that's what prompted this program and trying to figure out. And I think I'm beginning to understand, but trying to figure out why high school is so important to you guys, and the friendships that you made, and the fact that you still hang out together, and
I still visit Jeff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, are you involved in the alumni association at all?
No, we have, like, our class, we're about to have our 50th
Yeah.
anniversary homecoming. And the last time we had when it was our 45th, we raised a lot of money and we gave scholarships to 4 students at Jeff, $2,000 apiece, and then we gave $1,000 in T-shirt vouchers, high school shirts for the feeder schools.
Wow.
So, and talking about, I think we were very fortunate to grow up in El Paso. I think we were isolated from a lot of the other things that were going around the country or the attitudes. When I left El Paso for the Army, I knew that that was a different world. I mean, the discrimination, I didn't even know it existed until
You left.
because we hardly ever went to the other side of the freeway. We went to play over there, but we hung around in that area or in Juarez. And even traveling through Texas, when I got older, even when I was an attorney, we'd go to restaurants, they didn't serve us. I was already an attorney. They didn't serve my family.
Yeah, see, that's something that I can't quite figure out. I know about bigotry, but this town is 85% Hispanic. And so I'm the minority. I'm the double minority because I'm Jewish. So, that really takes me 2 notches down, but I've always felt incredibly comfortable here. Again, I said this to the last people, except for words like Isleta. You'd first get here and see YSLETA and say, what the hell is that? And how do you pronounce it? But when I came here, I immediately fell in love with this city. And I felt like I was in the 1940s. It made me feel safe for some reason. I just felt that this was a perfect match for me.
Bob, I pride myself in telling people that even though we're a relatively poor community, that we are very friendly.
Oh,
This is a very
incredibly
friendly
friendly. I'm the biggest booster of El Paso
I am
you
too.
could possibly find. And, people go, you live in El Paso? And I don't want them to come here. They don't have to come here. But I am just so comfortable here. I can't imagine living anyplace else. Eddie, I have 2 girls in Chicago and 1 in New York, and Eddie knows I have a place in Chicago. But every time I come back here, I get off the plane and I'm smiling because I'm happy to be home. And I love the culture, I love the environment, I love the people, and I wanted to find out why you guys loved your damn high schools.
Well,
and now I have, and I think that is unique.
I love my history and the people that I grew up with, and I'm very proud to call myself an El Pasoan del Segundo Barrio.
Good for you guys. We have to end. We've run out of time. I want to thank both of you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I want anybody who's listening to this from another school who wants to be on, please contact Mary Yanez, and her number is 831-7803, or you can call me, Bob Warach, at 779-3619, and we'll get you on. We'd like to have as many high schools come on here as possible and explain exactly why you're so connected to your high school, just like these guys did right now. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll get some calls, and I want to thank both of you for coming.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the invitation.
Sure, thanks.
Adios.